Be careful that you don't stub your big toe. Oh, but what we're really talking about is my big toe, which is Tom Campbell's theory on everything. So TOE stands for the theory of everything. This is our theme for the week. And we have been talking about consciousness through the theory of everything. And today we are going to talk about how do you know that you've made the right choice when you're making choices about how to act? How could you be selfless? And this is something that is very interesting because our mind gets into the way. And also, how do you remove fear and emotions, the bad emotions from how you're thinking? Because that is a big part about how you can raise your consciousness and lower your entropy. So we have a really great show for you today. How are you ladies doing? How did you? So I'm going to ask you, what did you think about the theory, my big toe, and how that works? Any thoughts you'd like to share?
I think it's interesting because years ago I heard about something called the Gaia principle, about how the earth was one big organism. And in order to be healthy, everything has to work just so. So it was an environmental thing. And so it seems like this is another take on that, but a higher level of spirituality. So
Yeah,
I found it very interesting.
yeah. So that's good, and it is about how we all work together, but also let's get into it and do our review of what we learned. So when we look at it, my big toe is the theory of everything. And so the whole idea is that it's a unifying approach to understanding how everything fits together. And as you said, what it's doing is it's uniting science and what we know and spirituality as well. And the way that it works is really there's the materialistic approach, which is that we just have what we see is what we get. And that I call that the outer world, which is basically everything that we see. And, I'm in my room and I've got my computer here. All of that is materialistic. And then there's the other side of that, which is the spirituality. This is where consciousness also comes in into our world. And basically, the whole idea is that reality, we're in a virtual reality, reality is based on information and you can compute it. And consciousness is that information system. And we get the data that's fed into consciousness is that what we sense. So that's your hearing, your what you see, what you taste, what you smell, and what you touch. All of those are feel. So those are all the interpreted by ourselves, and we have a memory bank that so it's kind of interesting because it really parallels very closely to the whole computer thing. And as a matter of fact, when we talk about it, we could actually visualize a computer and a computer game in terms of how our this system, we talk about the system and you talked about the world, Kathy, right? But the system that we're in, we can think of it like a computer game. And so the larger consciousness system or source is the information, that's the computer. And in the game, we are the people in the game. And then the controllers are, or the player is a higher being, if you will, that is controlling the game. And consciousness is a social system, and the whole premise of how it works is to become more efficient, and it evolves over time, making it more efficient. And how do we collectively lower the entropy, which is get more efficiency? And the way that we do that is to cooperate, to be caring, and thinking, how do I serve? Versus what's in it for me. These are the ego type things. What's in it for me? What can I get from someone else? And I want what I want for me. The low entropy is love based. How do I serve? And the high entropy are fear based choices. What can I get for me? It's all about me. And so in the larger consciousness system, that LCS, we are pieces in a larger system, and we are the virtual machine inside the larger machine. And the whole thing is, boil it down to love is the answer. All right. So we talked about that. So then what I want to talk about today is, how do we do that? Because if you go back and you listen to yesterday's episode, you will see, there's a lot of, and it all makes sense. But how do you practice? Saying love is the answer is great, and fear is high entropy. So you get rid of fear. That's all nice to say, but how do you do that? So that's what I want to focus on today, is how do we do some of these things? Because, it's not all that good. And our mind can intellectually kind of understand that. But how do we get our heart in the right place? Because that subconscious of ours takes us places that we don't even know we're going. Even when Tom Campbell, I got to make sure I say this, with Tom Campbell, he is a physicist, and this theory, when you listen to him speak on this, even he will, I lost my train of thought. We're talking about getting out of the game. He would, okay, let's just move on.
It's fine. It's okay.
Let's just move on. I'm sure it will come to me. This is, okay. Typical, right? Anyway, let's get going. So how do we make the right choices for ourselves? And we talked about, there's good choices and bad. So the other thing about the model is, it sounds really scary. Love is the right way, and the LCS will help you if you're helping to lower entropy. So when you're faced with a choice, how do you know that it's going to lower entropy or not, and you're making the right choice? Sometimes it's easy to figure out. Other times it might not be so easy. And here's the deal. This is the whole thing. It becomes kind of a whole self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, by not making a choice because you're not sure what choice to make. That gets you stuck, and that will raise your entropy. So the way that you can do it, if you're not sure, it's okay. The LCS is forgiving. As long as you are working towards that goal of lowering entropy and moving towards love, we're all good. It gives you some grace. So you can do your due diligence, kind of, spend a little bit of time and to make sure, which is the right thing to do. Maybe you do a little bit of research, kind of observe, and then you make a choice. Don't be afraid to make a choice. Don't get hung up about making a choice. You make a choice. And guess what? It might not be the right choice. It might be the right choice. But the thing is that you can learn from the choices you make. And making a mistake isn't the problem. Not learning about it and kind of putting that in your memory bank for later is where the problem is. And you know that there's that saying, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Is that the way it goes? Yeah, for sure. So you think about, those are that's kind of sounds funny, but that's, something that you can think about when you're making the choice. So make a choice, and you may not, again, it may not be a choice that you're sure of, but you still have to make a choice. I think that's the main thing, and then learn from it. When I was working in my corporate job, a little story. Sometimes something would go wrong. So we were working in operations, and we were dealing with people from companies, and they would call us directly. And sometimes we would make mistakes. And one of the mistakes we could make is sending out the wrong letter to the wrong person. And what it comes down to is that mistake is made. There's nothing we can do about it. But what we can do is find out why it happened and learn from it. And how we fix the mistake is how we will be seen in the future by our client, is by how we fix the mistake. There's nothing we can do. We made the mistake. It is. So just move on and learn from your mistakes. All right. So we can make, here's a good one, is being selfless. And so this one is interesting too, because being selfless, there's two different things. There is acting selfless and there is being selfless, and they are very different. And so acting selfless is when you do things for others. You provide a service, um, and you're doing it because it's your role. You're doing it for others. Being selfless means you do it because you want to do it, not because you have to do it. And it's more about other people, than it is about you. And so this is, how can I serve? And acting selfless, you might end up with negative feelings about being taken advantage. And that brings you into ego when you're acting selfless rather than being selfless. And you need to care about others and stop enabling. So I'm going to give you a really great example. This is for all us women out there. Uh, and, we do a lot of things for people. There's a lot of expectations around, um, being the child with childcare. And so we could take all of what we do for our family as being selfless. But the question is, are we acting selfless or are we being selfless? So, we get to make lunches for the kids and drive them to all their activities, and, make their beds and clean the house and all of those. And we can take that as being selfless activities because we're doing that for our family. but are we acting selfless or being selfless? So if we're doing that because I'm doing that because my role as the mother, these are things that mothers do, versus I'm doing this because I really want to do this. There's two different things. And sometimes it might be hard to distinguish. But so here, if you catch yourself, you're I can catch myself on this one because I can see this one for me because my children are grown now. But sometimes I'm doing the dishes while they're watching TV or something else, and I can start getting upset because and getting those negative feelings because I'm acting selfless because in my world now I'm doing this because of my role as a mother. And so uh, it's very easy to get into that state of negative feelings. um, the fact that you're the only one who's doing this, you're picking up after everybody and nobody else is helping out. You can see where that goes. So when you're in that state, you're acting selfless, you're doing it because that's your role versus being selfless. If you're being selfless, you're doing it because you want to do it, not that you have to do it, and you're serving other people. So I feel there's a fine line in that, and you have to see that fine line. And when you're acting selfish, that's when your ego is there, that other people should be helping out too. And the other thing about that you can think of when you're acting selfless, uh, you can care if you're caring about others, maybe what you're doing when you're acting selfless is enabling them to. So my kids are old enough to learn how to do the dishes or learn how to do the laundry and all of those things. And so getting them involved is actually how you can be selfless because you're helping them to grow up and learn skills that they will need when they move out eventually. And if you're acting selfless, they may not want to move out. Okay. So it's being selfless versus acting selfless. What's the difference, right? All right. We're getting OJ back. We're going to turn into, we're going to talk about now fear. And how do you remove fear? Because this was another big one that Tom Campbell talks about is we want to be in love and not fear. And that is really can be a hard thing to do. So I think we all have fears. I don't know if there's anybody who doesn't have fears. One of my fears came out really strongly when we went to Chicago and we went on the up this Sears Tower. I don't think it's called that anymore. To look at the view of Chicago, and they have this little 5 by 5 plot of, I guess, real estate on, I don't know, whatever big high floor it is, 60th floor, whatever it is, that actually juts out and it's glass. And all these people are going on there taking pictures and they're, lying down and all this stuff. My kids, Mom, let's take a picture. For love nor money, I could not walk out onto that platform. And that is when I really knew I had a fear of heights. And so my kids will laugh at my fear of heights, and they try and get me on that one now. I also know of the fear of spiders is really a big one too for some people. Okay, so fear is actually the most fundamental problem when you kind of look at this consciousness and going towards love. And almost all negatives are derived from fear. So the whole ego our needs and our wants. And competition is also all driven from fear. It's all fear based. And when we talk about competition, we're not talking about running a race. We're talking about, other competition where, I want to be better than you, or not so much running a race to see who's the fastest, because there is that kind of competition as well. And when we are looking at removing fear, we need to address it head on. Well, we could address it head on. There's a couple ways that Tom Campbell talks about it. First one is to address it head on. And so that means accept the worst and then go on. So think about whatever your fear is. So for me, being out, walking out onto the platform where there's a floor, but I can see down. What is the worst thing that can happen to me? And so I would say the worst thing is I would fall, right? And die. So if I can accept that, if I walk out there and I'm going to fall and die, if I can accept that I might fall, I might fail, then I can move on. So when you're looking at the fear of failure or the fear of, here's the one that we come up against a lot, is the fear of failure, or the fear that I'm not good enough. And so if you can accept that you might fail at whatever you're doing and just move on, then you can actually conquer the fear and remove the fear by accepting that I might fail. And that's what I did when I started doing videos, because that was a big thing to get me comfortable with doing videos, is accepting that fear of failure. And how I did it for me is I learned, or I understood, the model of mastery, that in order to master something, we need to start from not knowing what we don't know, and then knowing that we're not good at it, and we have to learn. And yesterday we talked about the curve of learning. And when you're starting, it's a flat line, and it takes a while before it really accelerates, because you got to learn everything first, and then you get comfortable, and then eventually you become comfortable, and you become competent at what you're doing. And you actually at some point get to the point where you can do it blindfolded. You don't even need to think about it. It just happens. So, but you need to move through that model. You can't start at just being able to do it with blindfolded. And so once I accepted and understood that model, I was able to move through my fear of failure. And there's so many really great stories of people who have just accepted that you have to fail yourself to a success, is what they say. And so if you can accept that you might fail, you can move forward. But I know it's not always easy. So the antidote for fear is actually courage, the courage to move forward and do it, even though you know what the worst thing. It's basically accepting that worst thing and having the courage to move forward anyway. Say, yeah, I can do it anyways. It's not always easy. So the other way you can do it is to sneak up on it. I like that, which is basically accepting your fear an increment at a time. Not so it's facing the things that are frightening. Now, an example of that would be, I'm going to use the fear of spiders. And apparently, when they're dealing with people who have a real adversity to spiders, what they don't make you, hold a spider in your hand right away. I think you probably die. And I have someone in my life who has the fear of spiders. And if anybody can spot a spider that's even barely a dot, it's her. She sees them like no one else. And it's a real fear. And this is the thing, a rational argument won't work with somebody like this spider that's like not even the size of a little dot is not going to hurt you. It doesn't matter. It's irrational. Her fear is her fear. And so there's like you have to face the fear yourself. And so with spiders, I think what they do is they show you pictures, and you start by doing pictures, and then they move the pictures closer to you. And then you touch the picture. Maybe you put the picture up to your head, and then you go into a room with spiders and you kind of move, and where they're in a contained, and you move incrementally closer to being able to cope with and face that fear. And so it can take some time, but that's another way to do it. And you can't run away from your fears or cover them up. They will always be there. You really need to face them. And like I said, rationally, that doesn't work. It's like, if you think about being, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old and there's a boogeyman under your bed, even if you tell your child it's not there, that's not going to cut it for them. They have that fear. It's real for them. You have to find a way to deal with it and face it, or they need to find a way to face it. And so I kind of talk about this in general. So fear is everything stems from fear, but also just removing negative emotions. And one of the ones that we face a lot, I think, is anger or shades of anger. So the first thing about it is to acknowledge and be aware that you have the feeling. That's the first thing. And so when you're and that's part of self-mastery just in general, is acknowledging and becoming aware. Oh my gosh, I'm angry. All right. And you have to have a strong, honest desire that you want to get rid of it. And you want to be different. So being is who you are, not that you want to act different, which is a behavior. And remember when we said you can act selfless versus you can be selfless. So you need to be different. And I think that's really the hard part, is being different and distinguishing that from acting different. And if you want to get rid of whatever negative emotion or kind of change that, first you have to want to be different. You have to want to be more loving, and you have to be relentless, persistent, but be gentle on yourself. So you acknowledge that you're angry and then let it go, then that's good. But if you find yourself, I want to be in love, but I have yesterday, my cat got into their kibble and spilt it all over the floor. And so my initial reaction was anger, but I was able to catch it and realize that I was angry at them fairly quickly. And then I was able to let it go. And then I just kind of tried to bring love back to them. But it can be hard, but you have to continue to practice. It's not easy, but practice, practice, practice. Looks like we have a cat too. Yay. Speaking of cats, we have cats. And the more effort you put into not being that way, not showing those emotions, letting those emotions go, then the higher your probability of doing it. So it's about practice and the effort you put in. And Tom talked about intent. It's your intention that you want to remove those negative emotions. That's what it really comes down to. So if you suppress angry or negative emotions by sweeping them under the carpet. You're basically indulging the emotion. And um, if you really need if you really need to make a change, you really need to see the impacts that those emotions have. Those negative emotions, if you can see what that anger has in terms of an emotion, then you might have the impetus to change. And if you have the impetus to change, that's your intent. I don't want to be that way anymore. I don't want to be an angry person or whatever that emotion is for you. And that's when you can make a change. And also, when you're making changes, if you make that change you're changing your environment. If you're really making a change, and your life will get better for that. So if you start showing love instead of anger, I guarantee that you will feel better, and your life and your environment that you're in will become more loving, and it will be a better environment. For sure. If you can let go of that anger, not acknowledge it or whatever the emotion, and then let it go, whatever those negative emotions are, you will see a better life. And also, if you do get upset, don't berate yourself. Don't get upset that you're upset. Not a good thing. And I want to leave with a quote. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And so, if we could kind of keep that in mind, that was from Mahatma Gandhi. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And if you can do that, you will be lowering your entropy, and that works towards the lower entropy that our consciousness system, the LCS, is looking for, that system. All right. Any questions or comments? What do you think about the how difficult is it to master those emotions, fear, anger, all of those things?
For me, I think it's going to have to be changing something I've done all my life. So I think it's going to be like habit,
Yeah.
going. You know what I mean? I think it's a habit. I think, but habits can be broken. But I just had to laugh at the beginning. I was kind of chuckling because um, all I thought was, oh, the Beatles got it right. Love, love, love. All you need is love. Started
Hey,
popping in my head. It
oh, that
started.
is cool. It's true. All
Yeah.
you need is love. Yeah. What a great song, right?
Yeah.
And they did get it right, for sure. I know I mean, I'm not perfect by any means. Look, yesterday I was angry at my cats for something probably was my fault to start with, but I think they got into the cupboard on their own, but I might have left it open too. But anyway, I'm not perfect. And I don't think I'll ever be perfect. Like you can't be perfect. We are in, uh, you know, um, we're in learning mode. And that's the whole thing, is that our experience on earth is about learning and growing. And to learn and to grow, you can't, there's no way to be perfect. And, but since I have adopted being more loving, in a general sense, and sending love to people, it has made a huge difference in my life. And I want to just say something about that too. It's just something I think about is, when you meet somebody that you're dating, and you get into a relationship, and there's a big deal about the first time you say I love you, and like people hold on to that. And so when I grew up with that idea that you don't just give your love freely to everybody. And that is just so opposite of what we should be doing. We should be giving our love freely to others. And that is where we will have a better world. We're going to lower the entropy and have higher consciousness for everybody that's out there. So, when I think about that, it's so contra to what we should be doing. But that's what I grew up with, and that's what I learned when I was growing up. So it's a real thing. And give your love freely. The better way to be. So we have talked about consciousness and my big toe, which is the theory of everything. And as a result, we talked about how how do you know that you've made the right choices, and how can you be selfless versus acting selfless, and how to remove that fear and anger and those emotional negative emotions. And it's a practice, and nobody's going to be perfect, but if we can keep trying and keep thinking about it and keep talking about it, we will get there, because our whole system, our whole what we live in, that container we live in, our world, wants to move towards love. And that's where we are going. And so tomorrow we're going to talk more about my big toe. And this time we are going to talk about how it relates to the food that we eat. All right. So we will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. If you love what you're seeing and you love it, please follow or share this with someone else. Take care.